Вітаю вас, друзі і колеги, колежанки. Ми зараз з вами на 4-му заході 18-ї національної ЛГБТІ-конференції. І це наш так званий політичний івент, який має назву «Фактор партнерства». Яким чином об'єднана Європа бачить роль ЛГБТІК+ в українських реформах. Мене звати Святослав Шеремет, я є співголовою Національного ЛГБТІ-консорціуму і матиму за честь модерувати цю дискусію, яка триватиме у нас 1,5 години. Зараз ми запросимо до участі в панелі частину наших панелістів-панелісток. Інша частина долучиться по ходу, зараз люди під'їжджають. І таким чином це буде доволі динамічне спілкування, тож я представлятиму наших колег і учасників. Пан Роберт Деккер, голова політичного відділу посольства Нідерландів в Україні. Будь ласка, пане Роберте. Працює? А можете замінити?
Now it's on. It's on, sorry. We need some technical assistance and we need help. I hope you can hear. Interpreter Yana Nesterevich, who represents Department of Compliance for Equal Rights and Liberties. It's a long name, but that's the long and the short of it, as the saying goes. And Yana, from Ombudsperson's office. At our last panel before lunch, we had Yana. Now she is in the same capacity, but on this panel for general discussion. Asiera Santian joined us, head of the Department for European Integration, Rule of Law, so forth, from EU delegation in Ukraine. Greetings. And online, we are joined by Adam Breton from Council of Europe. We would like to see Adam, political advisor or policy advisor, working for the division of gender identity, sexual orientation, and the rest. And Olena Kostenyuk, political scientist, senior manager for advocacy from Gender Stream NGO. So we are practically all here, all set, and we can start this panel, ladies and gentlemen.
Власне, яка мета? Ми сьогодні поговоримо разом з нашими шановними гостями і вами.
What's the goal? Now we are talking to the keynote speakers, and you, dear members of our audience, how European institutions can support our advocacy movement and whether it is actually happening right now. I would like to inform our guests, and you know, that we have two colors for voting, green and red. Keep them ready. And we can ask them whether they agree with a certain statement or disagree. Red is they disagree, of course. One general question. In your opinion, do institutions of United Europe, EU, Council of Europe, and so forth, in progress of advocacy reforms in favor of LGBTQ+ community? Yes, we can. Our panelists are observers, not commentators for the situation. Mostly it's green. There are 3 people with a dissenting opinion, and we can really discuss this situation. So here's the procedure. We all will receive 5 to 7 minutes for introductory remarks concerning the subject matter in hand. So first, speaker is Asier Santian, who represents EU delegation in Ukraine. So we have simultaneous interpretation, and if you need headsets, please get.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Concerning the European Union and how the European Union is protecting the rights of the LGBTIQ plus community. In our basic, let's say, legal framework, we have in the Article 2 of the Treaty of the European Union the preference for, well, let's say that human rights standards, and then is not only a matter of human rights standards, it's a matter of equality and the fight against discrimination. So equality, the equality is one of the basic values included in our framework, in our legal framework. And this is applying to basic things. So we understand equality to everybody in terms of access to documents, in terms of access to inheritance rights, in terms of access to, for example, pensions, the facility of really having access to the rights like any other citizen of the European Union. And this is also included in the European Charter of Fundamental Rights, in particular in the Article 21, that mentions that discrimination or the fight of discrimination is one of the basic principles of the European Union and one of the rights of every citizen in the EU. And as well, the Article 2 that is mentioned. The Article 20 mentions equality before the law as one of the principles of the European Union. In this regard, what we are doing concretely in Ukraine? Basically, we are doing three things. On one hand, we have a policy dialogue with the government of Ukraine, policy dialogue on human rights. So on a yearly basis, we talk about human rights situation, and within that dialogue, we are talking about the situation of the LGBTIQ plus communities in the country. And we also have the enlargement report. And the enlargement report, we are also mentioning in the paragraph related with human rights, which is the situation, which is our analysis. And we, for example, this year have included a number of recommendations, one in particular concerning civil partnerships. And the third, we are supporting directly civil society. For us, the civil society is a very important component of the society in Ukraine. So we are supporting directly or indirectly civil society organizations, and for example, the Council of Europe that is organizing these kind of events, also to do advocacy in defense of the LGBTIQ plus rights. Thank you.
Дуже дякую, пане Сієре. І наступним
Thank you, Mr. Sierra. And we would like to hear from Robert Dekker, who represents the Dutch Embassy. The floor is yours, sir. Так працює. Я хочу вам подякувати за те, що запросили, тому що, я думаю, ми завдячуємо тому, що ми були перша країна з і партнерства
the experience with registered partnership, because I thought, you're in this struggle to get there. Maybe it can provide some inspiration, maybe or at least some sort of, also in terms of strategizing. So I prepared a few points. Like in the 1970s in the Netherlands, we have the peak of the number of marriages. So already in 1970, and then there was a steady decline in the number of marriages concluded. And it had to do with the fact that our society was changing. People people had more income, women had a different role in society, so there was not really a necessary need to be married from a sort of, economic point of view of perspective. But at the same time, so people started living together more and more unmarried, but at the same time, especially when you have kids, there was this need to have some legal recognition, to have your rights ensured in terms of heritage, but also, like I said, the kids with their parents. So there was slowly but surely this need or this movement that asked for different options other than marriage. And this movement was led by the LGBTIQ, at that point we just said gay and lesbians, but LGBTIQ movement. And they were quite successful because in 1st of January 1998, the registered partnership, the civic partnership, was introduced in the Netherlands, and it was initially meant for same-sex couples because they didn't have the option for marriage, but it was also open to heterosexual couples, and it basically provided the same legal rights to marry two couples, like inheritance, tax benefits, pension, healthcare, all that. And the only difference really, there was not this romantic big yes I do moment with white dresses and doves flying around. It was a very practical option. And I think it's an interesting development because nowadays about 25% of all unions in the Netherlands are civic partnerships. And in 2024, those are the last numbers that I have. There were about 70,000 marriages concluded in the Netherlands, and about 25,000 of them were registered partnerships. And the interesting part is that out of the 25,000 registered partnerships, only 4% were done by same-sex couples. 96% of the people are heterosexual couples. So you see that this also involved. It started off maybe something for to fulfill a need that the LGBTI community had, but now it's actually much more used by heterosexual couples. And I think it shows that there was a different need, an increasing need or a need in the society that was evolving for different kind of arrangements. To have like a setup, an option to have your legal rights ensured as a couple without the emotional meaning that marriage has. And I think it's a fun fact that in the Netherlands, the registered partnerships are mostly concluded on Mondays and Tuesdays, and most marriages are concluded on Friday, when you can have a party and go in the weekend and sleep off your hangover. So you can also see there that, the difference between practical arrangement and the emotional aspect. I think it has overall has had a positive impact on society in the Netherlands, basically because it fulfills different options for different needs. I was just talking to Christina, my colleague, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I asked her, would you have opted for a registered partnership? She says, well, I don't know, because I didn't have the option. So I think it's good as a society is changing with, different minorities, different lives, different ways of living together. There are also different needs to make that arrangement more official. I think in the Netherlands, it has strengthened equality, social cohesion, and legal predictability for couples. And a study has also showed that for the LGBTI community, it improved actually mental health conditions, anxiety and depression dropped. Now, why I think it's important for Ukraine to have registered partnership, I don't think I will have to explain to you, because you probably agree with me, but I see some parallels. I think Ukrainian society is also changing, and is also in need of different options for different needs within society. And I think the government, the state, the society has an obligation towards the population, towards its citizens, to ensure that everybody can live in dignity, everybody can have enjoy the same legal
громадянам,
rights.
щоб кожен
And I think that's
жив
what we're seeing
із
now in Ukraine. And I think the war
гідністю
with
і
Russia, in a
почувався
way, it's
добре. Ця
unfortunate, but it has
війна з
accelerated this
Росії,
process. I
яка
think it makes sure
трапилася,
that
на
of
жаль,
it,
але вона
the
прискорила
consequences
цей
that even,
процес.
also the
І
role of women are
навіть
changing in society,
наслідком
but you
цього
also see it
стало не тільки зміна ролі
with
жінки у
the
суспільстві, але
military.
і
Very brave young men,
і
whether they're gay or
погляд
straight, they're fighting
на
for their country.
військових.
They're giving
Ці дуже
an
мужні
incredible
чоловіки,
sacrifice.
які
And I think the country owes it
воюють,
to them
які
that,
несуть
God forbid, something
свою
happens to them, they
жертву
have their legal
суспільству,
rights ensured
але
for their spouses,
треба,
for their
щоб
loved ones.
суспільство навзамін
And
гарантувало
in terms of
їм
hospitalization
можливість
or inheritance.
скористатися
And this
правом
is including
щодо
also
своїх
LGBTI
коханих.
community. So I don't think, in a way, it's a sort of,
Прискорило хід
well, it's a
речей
human
для
rights issue, I would say. It's
ЛГБТІК-спільноти.
something
Фактично,
that
ми тут
everybody should be
говоримо про
entitled to.
права
Now, the second reason
людини,
is
на
that, of
які
course, there has been
має
a decision by the
право
European
кожна
Court of Human
людина. І
Rights
далі
that found that Ukraine is in
є
violation of
рішення
Article 8 of the
Європейського
European
суду з
Convention
прав
on Human
людини,
Rights by failing to
де
provide legal
говориться про
recognition and
те,
protection for
що не
same-sex couples.
можна
So Ukraine is a party
порушувати
to that convention,
Європейську
is party
конвенцію
to
з прав людини, яку
recognizes the
Україна
legal authority
підписала,
of the Court of
і
Human
не
Rights.
давати
Then if they rule so, you
рівних
have a legal
прав тим,
obligation
хто
to
вступає в
fulfill
цивільне
to
партнерство.
fulfill
Україна має
that
виконати
need.
це зобов'язання,
And of course,
яке вона взяла
Ajay is
з
sitting
собою
here as well. We
відповідно
have
до
the alignment
конвенції.
with the EU
Також
standards.
далі нам треба, щоб
Ukraine
Україна відповідала
EU
певним
integration
європейським
roadmap, especially on the
стандартам.
fundamentals, it also includes
Дорожня карта
a provision
інтеграції
to
України
provide for registered
в
partnership. And I'll be very
Євросоюз. Вона
frank and
також
blunt and
вимагає
very
визнання
undiplomatic,
цих
and I'm also this with
партнерств.
people in parliament,
І
with
тут я
politicians.
скажу дуже
If you say you want to be with
дипломатично,
Europe, you have to do your homework.
враховуючи
And this is part of your homework. And without it, there's no
якщо
Team Europe.
вам кажуть, що
This is
ви
what
зробите
is part
певну
of the deal.
домашню роботу,
It's
щоб
not only about
вступити до
economic
Євросоюзу.
reforms,
Ви
it's not
повинні
only
її
about,
зробити, і це
getting
не про
support,
економічні
it's also
реформи,
about
і це не
social
про
values,
надання
and
якоїсь
this is
особливої
part of the deal.
підтримки, і не про
And I
не
know
про
that this is a
отримання
sensitive topic in
підтримки.
Ukraine, not for
Це
you,
про
obviously. I think we
соціальні
all
стандарти,
agree here in
і
this room.
це не
But
так
there are many
складно.
opponents
Мені не
in
треба
society, the
доводити
religious
вам, людям в цій
authorities,
кімнаті,
conservative
але є багато членів у суспільстві, є
groups.
багато гравців у суспільстві,
But
як
like I said,
релігійні
I
якісь
see
спільноти, консервативні
Ukraine
спільноти, які
making a
чинять
clear
спротив цьому.
choice towards
Але
Europe.
я
I see
бачу, що
Ukraine also changing
Україна
in terms of
робить чіткий
values,
вибір в
in terms of
сторону
society,
Європи і
and
приймає
I think maybe
цінності
the
на
Dutch
рівні
experience in that
суспільства. І гадаю,
aspect, or in
що
that sense, can provide some kind of
нідерландський
inspiration,
досвід, він
because
може
it also didn't
тут
happen
давати
overnight in the
якесь
Netherlands. We
певне
had a long
натхнення.
debate in society,
Те, що ми
within
маємо, ми
politics.
не
There was
здобули
opposition
за
from religious
одну
groups.
ніч.
There
Нам
were
доводилося
people that
долати
thought,
певний
why
спротив в суспільстві. У
do
нас
we
були
need
свої
this?
групи
Because we have
спротиву.
marriage,
Нам
isn't that
казали,
enough?
а нащо
But we went through that
нам
whole
запроваджувати
process,
партнерство,
and
якщо в
we've
нас
come out on
існує
the other
шлюб?
end, and nobody
Але
questions it anymore. Actually, I think
зрештою,
everybody in the Netherlands sees this
коли
as
в
a
кінцевому
thing, not to think about it
рахунку
as an
стається
asset rather than a
камінг-аут,
burden.
ніхто ні цьому
So I
не
hope
дивується, це
this can be some kind
сприймається
of
як
inspiration and also maybe some kind
надбання,
of hope
а
for
не
you.
як
Thank you.
недолік. Я сподіваюся, що вам це буде надихаючий приклад. Дякую.
Дякую, пане Роберте. Із двох промов, що пролунали.
Thank you, Robert. Having heard thank you, Robert. Having heard two interventions, we clearly see that the format of civilian partnerships looks attractive for a big part of society, and I believe that this will be noticed by the government, and we will be grateful to our foreign partners who will remind Ukrainian members of parliament and people in government about your positive experience with partnerships. And we are very grateful to you that you mentioned the needs of Ukrainian military, who, especially from LGBT community, that they also deserve for their rights. And I'm happy to give the floor to Yana from the Ukrainian Office on Human Rights. Dear participants, I am happy to represent the Ombudsman's Office. I think that our today's discussion is not only about the policy, but this actually we're discussing the readiness of our society to defend dignity, to stand for dignity. As for the interaction between the state and the civil society, there should be a close interaction between the government and civil society, while the Ombudsman's Office may serve as a bridge for the two. When the NGOs and CSOs, they reveal some problems related to either to the rights of LGBT community or in human rights area, they should transfer these problems, should communicate the problems to the government, and this could be done via the office of the Verkhovna Rada Ombudsman on Human Rights. And actually, this will create a triangle of cooperation, or maybe even the whole line of cooperation. In the context of Euro integration, this triangle will operate quite well, and our success with the Euro integration roadmaps will depend on the efficiency of this cooperation. Then we should think about the rights of LGBT community as one of the components of Ukrainian Euro integration. Actually, it's not about identity, it's about equality, it's about inclusivity. As of today, the Verkhovna Rada Ombudsman can work through the following mechanisms. These are recommendations to prevent hatred speech. These are contribution to the discussions, to development of roadmaps. As for the strategy, as for the EU equality strategy, the new strategic course of the European Union, it brings in about sexual orientation, gender identity, bodily characteristics. So they emphasize on that, which means protection not only for an identity, but also the forms of self representation and bodily characteristics. For Ukraine, this means that we have to amend our legislation and provide for remedies to protect your rights. That is, we have to reshape our legislative provisions and implement these new provisions. Human rights should remain the top priority, which means zero tolerance to hate crimes. and this is not a recommendation to the state. This is the must, and the level of investigation, successful investigations of hatred crimes should be an indicator how that is implemented. Today, of course, we live under very tough conditions of full-scale war, and human rights becomes very important. Actually, it is a vital part, a driver of the reforms. The rights of LGBTIQ people is not about the rights of some groups. This is the indicator how society can guarantee the rights to every person. Jana, thank you for your intervention, and I will add a comment. A moment ago, we have heard that these are not just two features, not only sexual orientation and gender identity, but also gender self-expression and sexual characteristics should be included into new legislation. That is, these are the foundations of the new European strategy on equality. It's my pleasure to give the floor to Mr. Adam Prodan, who is head of the Adam Broughton. Can you hear us? The floor is yours. Please take the floor.
Thank you very much.
Дякую.
There was an issue with the translation. I'm definitely not the head of the SOGIESC unit, but I'm a policy advisor, so I wouldn't want to my manager to mishear that. But first of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation to participate in this extremely important conference. And I'd like to commend the organizing team on putting together this conference together under the current extremely challenging circumstances. In order to lay the ground a little bit, I'll initially lay out the Council of Europe's key framework for ensuring the respect for human rights, democracy, and the rule of law in its member states, namely through the dynamic triangle, before moving on to how this is being implemented as regards Ukraine, and specifically on SOGIESC matters. Just to confirm, I'll use the acronym SOGIESC, and that stands for sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics. The first part of this dynamic triangle is standard setting. These standards can be found in legally binding conventions and charters, as well as soft law texts, for instance, adopted by the Committee of Ministers and PACE, the Parliamentary Assembly. Secondly, the implementation of these standards is monitored by different bodies, such as the European Court of Human Rights, as well as specific monitoring bodies, such as the European Commission Against Racism and Intolerance, which I'll refer to after this as ECRI. Thirdly, where gaps are found in implementing these standards in the member states, the Council of Europe supports member states through technical cooperation to close those gaps. And I'll talk a bit later on how these refer directly to Ukraine. As regards standard setting, the Council of Europe has continued to develop its standards in regards to SOGIESC. So the European Court of Human Rights jurisprudence continues to affirm the equal rights and dignity of LGBTI persons as protected by the Convention. It has clarified state obligations vis-a-vis, for example, same-sex partnership recognition, legal gender recognition, combating hate crime and hate speech motivated by SOGIESC grounds, and other areas. Furthermore, the Committee of Ministers has adopted recommendations on ensuring the equality and respect for human rights of LGBTI persons, starting initially in 2010 with the recommendation on combating discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, through to this year's groundbreaking recommendation on equal rights for intersex persons. This most recent recommendation on intersex persons serves as a tool for reform and calls for member states, amongst other things, to prohibit non-consensual medical interventions on intersex persons, ensure that sex characteristics are recognized as a ground of persecution in asylum procedures, and implement hate crime and hate speech legislation that encompasses sex characteristics as a protected ground. It's worth noting other bodies also produce important standards on SOGS, notably the Parliamentary Assembly, Commissioner for Human Rights, Xviii, and others. The Council of Europe supports member states, including Ukraine, in implementing these standards, and I'll circle back to this. In terms of the monitoring work, as part of this dynamic triangle that I mentioned earlier, this is carried out by a number of bodies. ECRI, since its 5th monitoring cycle, has included LGBT and then LGBTI matters within its reporting. ECRI's country monitoring of Ukraine is currently ongoing as part of its 6th cycle. The report will be published in the second half of 2026 and will provide an in-depth overview of Ukraine's progress in meeting Council of Europe standards in relation to combating racism and intolerance, and will propose ways to improve in a range of areas, including LGBTI equality. As part of the intergovernmental work, the expert committee SOGS is mandated to review the implementation of the 2010 recommendation that I mentioned earlier, which gives us an overview of the state of play and identifies best practices. Alongside thematic reporting since 2022, earlier this year, the Council of Europe published a comprehensive review report covering the entirety of the 2010 recommendation. This report showed there had been some progress in areas such as same-sex partnership recognition, combating hate crime and hate speech, and adopting an intersectional approach to anti-discrimination provisions. However, at the same time, it noted a stalling in some areas, such as recognition of rainbow families in terms of parenthood, and regression in others, such as freedom of expression and the shrinking of civil society space. This report also provides fact-based and targeted policy recommendations to member states based on its findings. In terms of Ukraine specifically, before moving on to cooperation activities, I shall briefly mention the importance of Ukraine's implementation of judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, specifically in regards to SOGS. 2 SOGS cases, which are currently under supervision by the Committee of Ministers of Maimalakhin and Markiv regarding same-sex partnerships and culture in Ukraine, which has already been mentioned by one of the panelists in terms of needing to be implemented. The importance of their implementation is twofold. On the one hand, their full implementation will bring Ukraine closer to meeting Council of Europe standards and improve the lives of persons in Ukraine. And additionally, adherence to obligations under international law show Ukraine's respect for the rule of law and shows commitment to complying with the adoption of the rule of law roadmap. These 2 aspects, namely improving LGBTI equality and safety, through the implementation of the 2 judgments, as well as respecting to the rule of law, are both important parts of Ukraine's goal of becoming a member state of the European Union. In terms of cooperation activities, and I'll finish with this, the Council of Europe is currently supporting Ukraine in its endeavours to meet Council of Europe standards, such as supporting authorities in developing and implementing reforms, as well as through capacity building activities with Ukrainian LGBTI civil society organisations. On same-sex partnership recognition, in 2024, the Secretariat prepared a legal opinion on a draft law proposal on registered partnerships. This opinion confirmed how the draft law, if implemented, would go to meet Council of Europe standards and recommended how it could be improved. Whilst obviously that draft law has not been yet adopted, the opinion still serves as guidance for ongoing proposals. On combating hate crime motivated by SOGS, while the legislative process is ongoing, the unit developed a training of trainers for the Ukraine police services. This training of trainers will upskill members of the police services in investigating and prosecuting hate crimes motivated by SOGS, and will aim to ensure that this training continues to be implemented in the future. It's worth highlighting that the Committee of Ministers' 2024 recommendation on combating hate crime includes a definition of hate crime where personal characteristics or status should include all SOGI-esque grounds. Lastly, but as importantly, the SOGI-esque unit has been working on building the capacity and resilience of Ukraine-based civil society organizations. We support civil society's advocacy work for the draft laws on hate crime and the inclusion of SOGI as protected grounds via a grant. And additionally, the organization has supported the October Lesbian Conference, which provided a platform for empowerment, solidarity, and visibility of lesbian communities from Ukraine and beyond. I'll leave it there for now, but obviously look forward to the question and answers afterwards. Thanks.
І на цьому я завершу свою презентацію. Дякую вам за увагу.
Дякуємо, пане Брутоне. Залишайтеся, будь ласка, з нами на зв'язку.
Thank you,
Будемо
Broughton,
спілкуватися.
and please stay connected. We will continue to involve you. Now it's my pleasure to invite Olena Ostryniuk, who represents Gender Stream. Can you hear me? Good afternoon, dear colleagues and dear partners. I'm happy to be present here today. In a moment, I will ask you to use your red and green cards to express your opinion. Today, I'm in the room who share my opinion about the importance of the rule of law of Ukraine and share the idea that human life is a supreme value in this crime of this country, and irrespectful of race, sex, and gender, and we should ensure security and safety for all people. All green cards were shown. Okay, what do I mean? I represent Gender Stream organization, which coordinates the national advocacy campaign for the passage of a draft law 13597, which for the first time in Ukraine has to establish counteraction, build up counteraction to hatred crimes in Ukraine. The draft law, which I mentioned, is registered in the parliament, is registered for voting, and has passed through the Committee on European Integration. Actually, they have produced their primary opinion, and that this law is important for the Euro integration of Ukraine. From the very beginning, when the draft law, that bill, was entered to the parliament, it had received unprecedented support from the members of parliament. And for the first time, SOGI rights were mentioned in this draft law, and the draft law states the need for protection of SOGI rights. So we hope that number of MPs who support this draft law will grow. Now we work on a declaration supporting the draft law 13597. This declaration will include all the borders in Ukraine, and our partners from abroad who support this law here. We are grateful to our colleagues from the Euro Commission delegation who support us in that declaration. And around this declaration, we had established a coalition that supports passage of this law. And existence of this coalition is important because it demonstrates the support of society and support of international community to this draft law. Without such a support, the passage of such law is least probable in the parliament. In this context, I would like to recollect my colleague Olga Polakova, who brought me to an idea that under martial law, when we are waging a war against Russia, we have to establish the rules for society about which our military should be proud. We have LGBTIQ military. This is a civil society organization which takes care about the rights of the military in Ukrainian army. And today in this room, I see that we are numerous, and it is a proof that coming together as civil society, we are strong, and we can create miracles to some extent. And that is, we will need not to hide our identities and our faces. Thank you, Alana. I would add a piece of information and piece of expert information. Now, in the parliament, we have 7 draft laws where sexual orientation and gender identity are mentioned. There are some also homophobic draft laws, and it is only one draft law which contains some homophobic features in it. It had been preserved from very old times, and recently we managed to remove from the parliamentary pipeline several very old draft laws which were also homophobic by nature. So this suggests that we now have in parliamentary pipeline several draft laws which are aimed at soggy but without, unfortunately, gender self-expression and sexual features or bodily features. Now, I would like to ask one question per each panelist, and having received the answers, we probably will pick up questions from the audience. The first question is to Mr. Sierra. How important in political terms are the LGBT plus rights important for Ukraine's negotiations with Euro institutions, and to which extent Ukrainian part takes into consideration and understands the importance of the LGBT issues in course of these negotiations?
Well, as I mentioned before, equality is included in our treaties, and equality is included also in the Fundamental Rights Charter that is part also of our treaties. We have, for example, a new strategy on LGBTIQ equality in the EU. It means that the situation is not perfect inside the EU. It means that when you have a strategy, you have it because you need to achieve something and you need to still to achieve change. So this is also a reality. It's not that we are coming from a perfect situation. I'm personally coming from a country that approved marriage 20 years ago, and nothing happened. It was the first Mediterranean and Southern European country approving the equal marriage, and some people was expecting maybe travel, and really nothing happened. So it was very normal, accepted by everybody. 20 years later, we don't talk about it, right? Although I'm going to maybe just to tell an anecdote. I got married 20 years ago also. And at that time, during the ceremony, the person that was conducting the ceremony used my wedding to go again to talk against the LGBTI marriage. I mean the equal marriage, and I almost ran out of the ceremony. My wife had to grab me and said, "You shut up, do it, we get married." Okay. I said, okay. But then after I went to the person and said, "What the hell are you doing? This is my wedding, it's our wedding. You don't have the space to do that. I mean, having authorized you." So at that time, it was really something that it was burning. But I would say that it was artificially burning in the news, because the reality is that the society, I mean, it was accepted as it is, something normal. It's nothing really special. So in that sense, in the EU, what we do is to take it with normality. We are defending equal rights. We are defending equal rights of everybody. It is one of our values. And and that is very clearly stated in our treaties. In that sense, vis-à-vis Ukraine, this is part of, as I said before, of our dialogue with the government. We tell the government that this is normal. We tell the government that the criminal code should be modified, that there are a number of sentences in the European Court of Human Rights that they need to be considered and they need to be applied. And this is part of our political dialogue with the government of Ukraine. Regarding the second part of the question, I will say that, well, you know better than me your country. So some politicians, they are taking it more seriously. Some others, they have a different approach. And this is normal. As I said before, in my country also, during the discussions around the legalization of the equal marriage, there were different positions. And I will tell a second anecdote. It was the leader of the opposition at that time. He was at one point against equal marriage. Months later, or 1 year later, he won the elections. Months later, winning the elections, he went to the wedding of one of his ministers with his equal-sex partner. So this happened in Spain 20 years ago. It might happen also here. Politics are politics, but the reality is that we are moving forward. You will have the support of a number of countries in the EU that will have a different approach. This is normal. It might happen now, might happen tomorrow. Human rights, we are fighting for human rights more than 200 years ago, since the French Revolution in 1789. Could be better, could be worse, but slowly we have been advancing. Although it's true that it's very difficult, it has been very difficult for all of us really to get the rights that we have today. It's true that still there is a space for improvement, and we might keep fighting, but it's also true that it's very easy to lose them. So we need to keep an eye. Whatever has been already granted, we need to keep fighting.
Дякуємо, пане Сантіяне.
Thank you, Mr. Santian. And another A question for Mr. Decker from the Dutch Embassy. It is a specific question, taking into account the Dutch experience that you represent here. We know that in the Netherlands, the diplomatic corps is quite open for people coming with a LGBTQ plus background. So how those people who serve as diplomats provide for promotion of equality for all in the countries where they are posted? Perhaps that presents some difficulties for promotion of equity and equality. What is your opinion on the matter, sir?
To be honest, I'm not sure whether I understand the question correctly, because it seems to imply that the Dutch Foreign Ministry or the Dutch Foreign Service has some kind of special policy to hire LGBTI people, or when they're hired, they're given a specific assignment. This is not the case. The hiring policy of the ministry is merit-based, so everyone who think he or she has the right qualifications can apply, and this is regardless of what your background is, whether you're gay or straight or lesbian, whether you're Muslim or Jewish, regardless of family ties. You can also not buy your way into the foreign ministry. You go through the procedure, and if you're lucky, you get hired. I still don't understand why they hired me, because it was so difficult, but I'm here. But once you're in the ministry, and you have a same-sex spouse, then if you go abroad, of course, the ministry will supply your partner with the same benefits as straight couples will receive. They will also grant a diplomatic passport to your partner. They will go to the country of your accreditation and ask for a specific recognition. Actually, this is, if we talk about anecdotes, one of my friends 20 years ago, I think 25 years ago, was working for the ministry, and he was actually posted to, with his partner, with his civic partner, he was posted to Ukraine. And he was actually the ambassador then at the time had to go to the foreign ministry of Ukraine and ask for recognition of him as a diplomatic spouse. And the ministry of Ukraine, the foreign ministry, immediately agreed. So that was kind of interesting, because at that time, I remember also he took me to a gay club in Kiev, and it was all very dark and very shady, and you had to knock on a door. And so 20 years later, we're here, and I think we've all seen this huge improvement. So there is reason to be hopeful. We're moving in the right direction. Now, your second part of the question, what do LGBTI diplomats do to create quality? Well, Dutch diplomats, whatever their background is, have the same goal: to promote the interests and protect the interests of the Netherlands abroad. So it doesn't mean whether they're gay or straight, there's no difference. The Netherlands has a human rights policies that we promote, and it has several priorities: women, media, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, but one of them is also to help promote and protect LGBTIQ plus rights. So whether you're gay or straight, you as a diplomat, you're part of that. And what we do, we have a human rights fund, which we use to fund projects with, and also here in Ukraine we fund several projects that help the LGBTIQ plus community. On top of that, I sit in panels like this and try to share a bit of the experience of the Netherlands. Hopefully it also shows people that you can be gay and have a career and have a position in society. It's not a scary thing. And I think also behind the scenes we are doing our part. Our ambassador frequently has frank discussions with members of parliament, for instance, people in society, religious authorities, and we don't shy away of raising the issue of the LGBTI community and their rights here in Ukraine. I hope this answers your question.
Дякуємо, пане Декере. Тут я мушу
and just half a step backwards. I would like to explain the background. We have people at LGBTQ plus community and the contingent of people with this choice in life matters in Ukraine. We have adopted the strategy for prosecutorial bodies, and selection of candidates for positions of prosecutors is merit-based regardless of their sexual and gender background. We voice that as a state, so that opens the doors or gets the message across for the candidates, for the prospects, that this is not a predicament, this is not an obstacle. And we are approaching the state of play when such considerations play no role whatsoever in merit-based selection for diplomatic corps, military career, civil servants career. And now let me switch to Yana from the Ombudsperson's office. Yana, let me ask you this question, and let's think together. You know that the European standards for the Ombudsperson's institutions are slightly different. You have a special mandate in Ukraine. Speaking of reforming this institution, would the EU standards reinforce you, provide you with a broader mandate in terms of equity and equality, and how can this help us to reach our specific goals as Ukrainian civil society? Thank you for the question. In fact, our institution, our office, has quite a broad mandate. It's not just about parliamentary oversight for the constitution and so forth, but it's the A status and mandate on equality. And among our international colleagues, ombudspersons from different jurisdictions, a big family, we have the broadest imaginable. At the same time, when it comes to discrimination, hate crimes, we have no powers for making parties liable. And this is all about us needing or being in need because we discern this problem, we detect the problem. Protection against discrimination in regulations and legislation, well, does not always prove effective. Let me just say that in our annual reports, we reflect this. It is slow. It is sporadic, and there are certain reservations, and we would like to have it in a more comprehensive fashion. And the Euro integration processes were actively unfolding in our country. I think you would agree with this observation. Will make it possible for us and even empower us so that we get such addition to our scope. Our mandate in terms of independence, it's in the legislation, all right, but independence is not just about being protected against some unseemly influences from the government, from the parliament, so forth. But this is having a full toolkit for implementation of our mandate. So protection against discrimination. And this is not enough. The Euro integration track, without any doubt, will lead us to the end state when we have this reinforced range and protection against discrimination. Whatever the reason, the cause will be promoted to a high level, and Ukraine will demonstrate its readiness to become a full-fledged member of the European communities. as a family. Thank you very much, Yana. We are coming back to Mr. Bruton, political advisor with the Council of Europe. Adam, we know that the new strategy on equality for LGBTQ+ has been adopted for 2630. That's the horizon. So how the candidate countries can utilize this instrument, just how meaningful this instrument might be for the political players, political actors, and what would you suggest for the civil society to further strengthen this strategy in our advocacy? The floor is yours.
Thank you. So indeed, the second EU LGBTIQ equality strategy, the adoption of is certainly is welcomed, and it goes in line with supporting member states also in meeting Council of Europe standards. Positively, the strategy references cooperation with the Council of Europe, both in relation to improving hate crime reporting and victim support, as well as when engaging with international LGBTIQ+ equality experts and expert groups and networks. I think the biggest thing to speak about in terms of the EU's strategy is particularly in relation to bits where there are synergies between the ongoing work of the Council of Europe and its member states, and obviously the EU and its respective member states. So I'll bring up a couple of examples where I see those particular synergies. So for instance, under the Protect chapter within the EU's equality strategy, obviously there's a point there talking about hate crime, combating hate crime and tackling hate, and working with police services and the judiciary and legal professionals. And as already mentioned, there is this ongoing police, well, this soon to be coming police training that we'll be implementing in Ukraine that will go to support Ukraine's efforts in that area. And as already mentioned, supporting civil society advocacy work. And that's obviously an important part in terms of civil society's interaction with ensuring that they're meeting the Ukraine's meeting standards through that advocacy. Additionally, other Council of Europe recommendations and the full implementation of, which the Council of Europe stands ready to support Ukraine in doing, also cover hate crime. So that was the recommendation that I mentioned previously, with all SOGS characteristics mentioned. And additionally, hate speech in a different recommendation adopted that same year in 2024. So through the implementation of those, I see them also supporting moving towards what's laid out in the EU strategy. Another chapter I think is of importance and is on Empower, and specifically the aspects there in relation to artificial intelligence. So the Council of Europe recently published the Framework Convention on AI, which both the EU and Ukraine have signed. And obviously that's tackling to ensure that the life cycle of AI systems are fully compliant with human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Furthermore, both the intergovernmental structures covering anti-discrimination and gender equality are jointly working on a recommendation on equality and artificial intelligence. And this is to ensure that to provide a roadmap, policy roadmap for member states, and obviously that's including Ukraine in the Council of Europe framework, to ensure that AI systems do not negatively impact equality and anti-discrimination, also support equality and combating discrimination as well. And I think I'll just mention as well, the Council of Europe is in the process of working on its own and first LGBTI, the strategy for the equal rights of LGBTI persons. It's still under negotiation, but I can touch on some of its key strategic objectives. And for those that are well read into the EU strategy, you'll see also areas where they are coherent. So these strategic objectives cover societal recognition and equal dignity of LGBTI persons, countering disinformation and the manipulation of information regarding LGBTI people, preventing and combating violence and hatred against LGBTI people, and establishing safeguarding and strengthening protection through effective legal, institutional, and regulatory frameworks. So once adopted, this strategy will form a basis for ongoing Council of Europe work to support member states in meeting its standards, and as I mentioned, will complement the implementation of the EU's own strategy. And in terms of civil society engagement, obviously the work that has been ongoing should continue, and obviously we remain open to continue supporting in whatever way we can in that front. So yeah, I'll just finish there, but thank you.
Шановна аудиторія, ми незабаром перейдемо до сесії питань-відповідей. Поки що просто подумайте, хто готовий буде задати питання. Ми ще не починаємо.
What we are not starting the Q&A, but there's one remark about Mr. Bruton's intervention about this new strategy. I think we as civil society require its official translation, or maybe just translation to Ukrainian, because we also have colleagues from the Council of Europe office in Kiev. I decided to voice this. This is very good for our advocacy. We have to make references to the strategy. I think the Ombudsperson's office would agree with me. Mr. Bruton was referring to this old recommendation of the Council of Europe as of 2010, non-discrimination, combating homophobia. Nobody wanted to touch it with a budge poll. Even the Ministry of Foreign Affairs didn't want to translate it back then. We did it on behalf of our organizations and used as an advocacy tool in our work. And then later, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs used our translation as the basis and came up with the official version. This is very important for governmental communications, for GR, and we would like to see the official translation of this document as soon as possible, as soon as it is ready. Olena Kostyniuk, a question to you, or a question for you. Your organization, Gender Stream, is one of the leading advocacy organizations for our community. Now, speaking of other ways of interaction with the government, with the parliament, and what kind of efforts or levers we can use. I'm not talking about communities specific, but I have in mind windows of opportunity. Opportunities, basically. Can you present your views on this subject? Thank you very much. Thank you for this generous introduction and appreciation. Now, speaking of targeted work in GR, governmental relations, in Ukraine and beyond, quite frankly, let me say, you're doing this inside. We have two advocacy tracks. One advocacy track and the other is enlightenment or education. Speaking of enlightenment or education and the draft law I keep referring to, 13597, under that draft, we would like to do everything possible for our governmental bodies to see us not as them, and themselves as us. If you take my meaning, you know, the government, the parliament, local governments, they have to understand that they doing that for the society, this holistic approach, and that it will make sense. So we keep trying, we keep doing it, and we are persistent. The usual track of our work is also divided into national and international. Speaking of the national, we work with our MPs and governmental officials to teach them and educate them, explaining why this type of advocacy is necessary for the togetherness, the unity of our society. We have to break the wall of not understanding, let's say, for them to realize and then to communicate it further to their constituents. And we should always remember that politicians are elected officials, and they are always supported and backed up by constituents. So the constituents have the right to be informed. And another track of international developments for our European colleagues from all over the world, different countries of the world, to be precise, to become, to be of assistance, so that we can put this soft, mild pressure on our MPs on the road to European integration, so that they can amplify our voice and explain the necessity of such initiatives are being proposed, designed, and then adopted and implemented. And also another track, and this is something that is a matter of pride with us. I work with the National Police, the Sentinels project, Vartovi. That is our way to demonstrate that we start doing things not only when we become an EU member and all the laws are in place. We are already agents of change, and the change is here. It is here to stay. So we are making trainings for the National Police by 70%. The appreciation is increased as a result in the ranks on the force, let's say, of law enforcement, how to provide high quality assistance and services to our community, and also documenting crimes related to hate speech. And that helps us demonstrate that the work is ongoing and we have some positive changes. And the law enforcement bodies we have to support, and they in turn will boost the same process in the higher echelons of executive power and the legislative body for lawmaking.
Thank you for reminding us about trainings for police forces, for other law enforcers. I think that even in case all the CSOs in LGBT community start to deliver trainings for law enforcement, even in that case, it won't be enough, because they are numerous and they require a lot of trainings. And by the way, this raising awareness among law enforcement is in our roadmaps. Now let us pick up some questions from the audience. I ask you to raise your hands who would like to ask questions. I try to assess how many questions do we have. So we will act like this. One question per one person to one speaker. That is, one person can ask just one question to one speaker. Yevgen from the second row, will you please introduce yourself and then ask your question? I am Yevgen Lesnoy. I'm a journalist and documentary filmmaker. I have a question, and the speakers or you will decide who will answer. it's understandable that in 2014, from the Revolution of Dignity, Ukrainians actually demonstrated their Euro aspirations from the full-scale invasion. Many people started to understand about the negative impact of discrimination and that it has to be prevented. Now, anti-corruption work in Ukraine works due to or thanks to the pressure on Ukrainian authorities, including the threats to suspend funding from the EU to Ukraine. We all may recollect the cardboard Maidan in summer. So how do you think maybe more decisive pressure, more maybe a stronger pressure would be possible, saying unless you vote for this or that draft law, or unless you complete cluster 23, we won't support you with money. Maybe that would be more efficient in terms of legislation. Thank you very again. I've recollected famous Ukraine facility instrument, which was designed to increase Ukraine's attractiveness in terms of investments, and actually it attracts investments into Ukrainian economy. So who would like to answer Yevgen's question? Maybe Sier.
I can hide or do it. Well, first of all, the Ukraine facility is not to attract investment into Ukraine, okay? That is not correct. So it is comprised by three different pillars. One is working on technical assistance to support the European integration. So in this pillar 3, for example, the activities that are funded to human rights NGOs, including LGBTI NGOs, are funded through this pillar 3. There is a pillar 1 also that is a kind of budget support to the government. And this is the one that is linked with the indicators. The indicators are set up and they are agreed between the Commission. The Commission is, which is more or less like I will say like the legislative of the European Union, but also together with the Council. And the Council is more or less like I would say, kind of executive of the European Union, and is where the different member states are represented, the 27. So these decisions, they need to be taken, and they are taken by unanimity, like many other decisions in the EU. So what you are proposing is something that will have to be approved by the Commission, and then will have to be approved by the different member states. As I said before, we have a strategy because we have a situation that is not exactly bad, but it's not perfect. I mean, we are better than other parts of the world, definitely, but we have different countries with different opinions and different positions, and you are very familiar with it. So realistically speaking, if the indicators, they need to be approved by all the member states, you know the answer already, right? I don't need to give you the answer. In this sense, we need to be practical, and we need to be realistic. We are here to support Ukraine. We are here to ensure that the European money is arriving to Ukraine to support you during the war, but also that this money facilitates change. In that sense, we are identifying a number of indicators that are realistic, that can be achievable, and that they are really related with change. Some of them are related with anti-corruption, some others with rule of law, some others with different aspects, like public administration reform, for example, or some other areas that are important for the European integration to ensure that at one point all this is also facilitating the process of Ukraine becoming a member of the European Union as soon the sooner the best.
Вступу України в Євросоюз, щоб він наближався до свого логічного завершення.
Дякую, пане Сеціяне, за відповідь. Дякую, Євгене.
Thank you for this answer, and thank you, Evgen, for your question. And Alexander and Anna. I am Alexander Demanka, head of organization LGBTIQ service persons for equal rights, LGBTIQ military for equal rights. I like how your organization cooperates with the Ministry of Internal Affairs, how you interact with the with Ukrainian legislators. And now my question, when do you want to promote your agenda and your ideas, what else tools you would like to see from the side of international partners to promote your agenda stronger? Thank you for this question. This is one of the vectors of our work. We seek for the support of our partners in, I mean, top officials, Ms. Ursula von der Leyen, Mr. Charles Michel, and top government officials from other countries, because we need their declared support. We would like them to become our allies and would help us to push our legislators, our parliamentary members in passage of the legislative initiatives which remain under the scrutiny of the parliament. And how do we try to reach that? So the first step is to become friends, and then to convince our international partners to push the government or government actors. Thank you, Elena, for this very frank answer, but actually you described very openly the advocacy mechanism, the advocacy process, how it works. We have time for a couple of more questions. Okay, Anna, the floor is yours. Питаю одне запитання двом спікерам. Один адвокація цивільних партнерств. Ми уникаємо теми батьківства і дітей. Як це відбувається в Нідерландах? Ви сказали, що єдина різниця між цивільним партнерством і законним шлюбом це просто така церемоніальна, да? А як щодо дітей, тому що в Україні, хоча ми не релігійна країна, вона говорить іспанською. Тому перекласти її запитання, вона ставить запитання іспанському учаснику. Чи Іспанії була велика опозиція 20 років тому теж щодо дітей в шлюбі і
Yeah, thank you so much for raising this because this was actually my points, but I kind of avoided it because I wanted to focus on the
це запитання, тому що я намагався не зупинятися на ньому
on the rights part.
навмисно.
But I understand that children are always a difficult topic in the sense that, you know, especially conservative and religious groups will always bring up the children because, God forbid, they are affected by the big gay virus. But children of heterosexual couples with registered partnership, initially only the mother could be a legal parent, and the father needed to recognize the child separately. So initially there was a difference there. But there was also again a debate on this, and they felt, okay, after we had some experience with this legislation, we need to change it. So in 2014 this was changed, and the mother and father of heterosexual couples are automatically both parents. I remember, for instance, when my brother, he's also not married, or he was married, not married with his first partner, and he had to go separately to town hall to recognize the child. That is not needed anymore. For same-sex couples, there is still a difference. Both partners can recognize the child of their partner, but this is basically the same as in marriage. And there is even now a debate in the Netherlands going on whether a family can be bigger than just two parents and a child, so that even more people can be like you have three parents legally recognized. But again, that is still a debate, and there are people debating like this is a good thing, this is not a good thing. But it also shows how the debate is constantly evolving and adjusting to different needs and developments in society. So I hope this answers your question.
відповідності до того, що в суспільстві, які ідеї відбуваються.
Sorry, yes, church in Spain or because you were asking both, right? About children, honestly, I don't know, but I have a couple, friends, they are, both of them, it's a lesbian couple, and they have, their older daughter is 18 years old now. As far as I know, they have been, both of them, legally speaking, moms in Spain since the very beginning. And one of them has been serving in the Foreign Affairs Ministry abroad, and I know them for more than, I will say, more than 10 years for sure, maybe 15. So I cannot tell you, but it most probably was at the same time. Concerning the church, yes, the church was one of the. Well, let's be clear. There is a difference. First of all, Spain is quite attached, culturally speaking and even legally speaking, with the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has a special arrangement, although the other churches are also, of course, legal in Spain. However, the church is very plural as well. So certainly part of the hierarchy was against, but part of the church was not against. So it was a minority, but they also had the space to advocate for the rights of everybody to be married and to be respected as with equal rights. Slowly, in the last 20 years, I think that the number of people within the church that has been in favor of recognition of the equal marriage, I would say that that has been increased in Spain also, although there is still a part of the Catholic Church also in Spain that is against. How important it was at the end of the day for the approval of the law? The law was approved 20 years ago. And again, I would say that part of the discussions and all the positions against the law at that time, I would say that they were a bit artificial because the society was beyond that. So the moment that the law was approved, it hasn't been an issue anymore. So it has been maybe an issue for a small minority that is hyper-conservative, even, but is not representative of a big component of the society. The society was already beyond of that in Spain 20 years ago.
Дякую, пане Сенціяне. Я трошки внесу зміни в наш регламент.
Thank you, Sensiana. We have almost exhausted our time now. I suggest you to take your green and red cards because you have to answer the question. Having listened to our respectable speakers, are you now convinced that European institutions will help us? If you hope that this will happen, please show green cards. If you are not sure about that, please show red cards. Will you please keep holding? I try to count our red cards. I see red cards. That is what we had at the beginning. There were 3 cards at the beginning, and the number had grown up to 5. We are very thankful to Mr. Sensiana, to Mr. Decker, to Pan Breton online,